Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Neid, and today I am joined by a very special person to me. She's a friend, client, mentee, and all-around badass, Kelli Coleman. Kelli, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
You know, I was really excited when you booked in with me because you're someone who does things differently. Like everything you do differently, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity for me to highlight coaches who operate outside the box. And I think you do it in a way that is authentic to you and it deserves to be highlighted. And as people know who listen to the podcast, I frame our conversations around your story and the lessons to be pulled out from that, because it's important to learn about the person behind the accolades or the person behind the accomplishments. So when someone looks at you, they're like, oh yeah, she owns 2 gyms and she does real estate and she does coaching and she's a mentor to other young Black entrepreneurs and she's involved in her community and she raises money for charity and she hosts meets. And you're like, well, what the fuck? You know, and you and I have had a lot of conversations around the what the fuck. And I thought, what better way to do that on a podcast? So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit with me. Maybe give the audience a little bit of a background on where you started out in this coaching journey, business owner journey, and where we are today. Because there's a lot to tease out, and I'm sure I'll pause you at certain points.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. So started a long time ago. What got me into the personal training space was me myself being obese. I was a little over 300 pounds at my heaviest. I didn't weigh myself, so who knows how heavy I actually had gotten until I recognized it was a problem. And, you know, I had a doctor tell me at 23, hey, you're going to die if this is like the path you're going to continue. So that was my wake-up call. Crazy enough, it wasn't a wake-up call right away. It took a little bit more, hey, like this is bad, blood work's bad, everything's bad, before I was like, okay, I need to change this. Battled a lot of mental health issues and whatnot. So, turning to drinking at a young age, stuff like that. So basically, when I finally got into the space of making the change, I quickly decided that, like, because I had no one to help me and because I had nowhere to turn, it was just more of a like, hey, you're fat, do something about it. And I'm just like, I wouldn't be fat if I knew what to do about it, right?
That's
So,
a really interesting point, though.
yeah,
Right? Like, you're
yeah,
fat, do something about it. It's like, well, I wouldn't be here if I knew what I was supposed to do.
right. And like coming from being a athlete my whole life, you know, I started sports when I was 5 and did sports all the way up to my first year in college. I did sports, marching band, I did every single sport. Very busy, very structured, very militant life. And so when I lost that, you know, I was like, oh, I'm in college. I'm 18. My mom said I'm out of the house. I'd never come back. Okay, I'm gonna do whatever I want. Um, so I gained all the weight. I gained 130 pounds in college, and yeah, it was bad. My first trainer was great. He got me on the path, and I just knew I wanted to make that impact in people's life. So I got my personal training certification. From there, when I traveled into the space, got into the gym space, I realized very quickly that I was not welcome in many spaces for many reasons, whether that was because I was fat. I remember getting kicked out of or laughed out of group classes because they're like, are you sure you can do this? You're bigger than the rest of us. It's the reason I hate yoga is because like yoga instructor like belittled me in front of the whole class for like 20 minutes.
Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah. So I knew that I'm like, I have to figure out how I can create a space that everyone is welcome, whether you're fat, Black, gay, male, female, non-binary, trans, whatever. Because I heard the same similar stories to other people. And like at this point, we should all know that going to the gym is not like a hobby. It's health. It's your health. It's wellness. It's everything. So having access to these spaces, like it just has to happen. It's no longer like just for the jocks or whatever it was back in the day. So now we're here, fast forward through all of that. And the last gym I was at was my huge motivation for me to open the first GND location. Um, to be quite honest, before I was ready to do it. But there was many things that led up to that point for me making the executive decision to say, hey, no, it's time to get out of this. It's time to do my own thing, create the safe space for people, and just move forward. So now we're here.
So you skipped over what I think is a really interesting part was if you're going to open a gym, you need an immense amount of capital. You had
Mhm.
already started investing. You've already started investing. You had already started being a businesswoman far before you opened the gym,
Oh, yeah.
right? So what were some things maybe along the way? So you were working as a personal trainer. Then I know
Mhm.
you started investing in real estate. What was
Mhm.
that whole process like?
So the one thing I knew is also I knew I didn't want to work for anybody else. Like whether I opened my own gym or not, I knew that that was a fact. So
Amen.
what I yeah. What I did first was while I had my very cushy, corporate job, I started looking into properties to invest in two flats because I'm like, okay, I'll get a 2 or 3 flat, live in one, rent out the other. That'll cover my living expenses. Everything else I'll figure out. So while I still had my W-2 job and actually during COVID, this might sound terrible, but COVID was great for me. I was able to finally sit down and like breathe because I was such a busy person. I was going through a lot. I was going through a divorce. I had to move to my grandma's house to pay for the divorce. So it was a lot. But that offered me the time to like kind of sit down and strategize like, okay, if I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to open a business, I need to have a house purchased. I need to have my investment property under my belt because if all else fails, I can pull out money from my house via a HELOC. I can leverage my house for a loan. I can do a lot of things if I have this real estate investment property. So that's what I did first. I made sure everything was good. I had tenants at the time that I bought with the property, which was another one of my things that I wanted to, have was tenants already there, vetted and paying rent, so that I could kind of move along quicker. Um, so yeah, that's what I did first, and it
I
worked
think,
out.
the reason I wanted to make sure that we didn't skip over that was, especially in coaching, a lot of people fall into this trap of, well, if I'm going to make money, I'm going to make money from coaching. And then maybe you have a 401k or in Canada, you have an RRSP or you have some sort of locked in investment savings account. There are way better ways to invest your money for the long term that actually work for you. And one of the things that I'm super grateful for was when I moved back to Ottawa from out west. I worked with my mom's a real estate broker, so she helped me finance a home here in Ottawa. And now that we actually have a real estate investment, we have an asset. Olivia and I have so much more freedom for whatever our next decision is going to be because we've been paying into this house that is probably able to be sold for close to 700,000, but we only owe 275 on it. So we have a phenomenal amount of equity invested into this house. So if we want to move to the US within a year, which is one of our goals, well, we don't have to have additional capital. We have it in our home. And
Hmm.
people forget that, or maybe they're just, I say forget, but I think most people are actually blissfully unaware
Oh yeah.
that when you purchase a home, the government's basically giving you free money. Like the bank is basically giving you free money because the money that you pay back into the house, the only money that isn't yours is interest,
Correct.
and it's never going to depreciate. Like
Correct.
long term, it's never going to depreciate. So
Hmm.
I love that you mentioned you highlighted the importance of investing your money into something that it will grow and provide you a safety net.
Hmm.
Most people don't have that. So you're working as a personal trainer. What was the W-2 job? What was the corporate job?
I was the assistant manager at the gym inside the Sears Tower at the time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And during that time, you were also competing in powerlifting
Yep.
at a high level. Kelly got really fucking strong,
Oh yeah.
and you built up a reputation within the industry. So when you opened your gym, how did you make sure that you had people coming through the door right away?
Well, the crazy part was me being me. In my mind, I'm like, maybe there'll probably only be like 3 people that come with me, right? Like, so I was like planning for the worst
As
because
one
I
would.
just, Yeah, I've always been a humble person. It's just the way that I was raised, and like I have, I guess, imposter syndrome, I guess is what you can call it. Well, I'm like, like I'm okay, but like I'm not, I don't expect people to fall over themselves for me or whatever. Um, but I had like I just kind of, it was something that I knew. When I broke the news to my clients, this is how I knew that everything's going to be okay. I didn't lose a single client. Every single one of my clients came with me to the gym. And I was like, okay, as long as I still have the same revenue coming in that I had when I was still at my previous gym, that I'm going to be fine. Like expenses will get paid, overhead will get paid. I might not profit a whole lot of money, but the doors will stay open no matter what. Then the second step was talking to the other trainers that also came on to work with me at GND. When they were like, "Yep, we're in. We're all coming over." That's when the signs were all there, and it only took like a month to get like up to speed. Like we weren't even open to the public yet, and we were sold out of memberships. Like we didn't have any more room. So that was a that was a great problem to have, and I think like just being authentic and being myself and like being very transparent about the things that caused me to leave the previous gym worked very well in my favor because it's like, look, this is what's going on. Here's the proof. Like, this is why I'm doing this. And, you can be a part of the change because I always look at G&D as a movement more than just like a brand or a gym. Like, it's a
Absolutely.
movement. Like, it's a statement. It's a big deal to be a part of like what we're doing because we're doing it different. And it's like, we're unhinged. And I think that's what brings us the success. I
I
mean,
love that
it
word.
does.
I love the word. I love the word unhinged because it's so you, because unhinged could be chaotic. It could also be so
Mhm.
much excitement that you blew the doors off, right? It
Yeah.
could be so many different things, but it's just crazy eccentric out there. And these are all things that I think, because I know you, I know your personality is, you're unhinged. You're a little bit crazy, and
Yeah.
you need to be. Um, are you comfortable speaking on a little bit of, the drama that took place around the time that you were opening as like the catalyst for, you've alluded to a couple of times creating a safe space, creating an inclusive space.
Yeah.
Why was that so important to you?
Um, because I was a part of an environment that wasn't safe. And it wasn't fostering the growth of me and, to be quite frank, all the other black people that were working, the few, the two others, sorry, that were working with me. It just wasn't there. And it's like we we have to create a pathway to showcase like our skills and like our community and like basically break the barriers and the walls and the stereotypes and all the other crap. Like it was super important for me to like be like I will lead that if
Hmm.
that's what I have to do. It was super important to me because I was like, especially in gym spaces, like it's very, it can be and is very racist, very misogynistic. Like women gym owners, I can name in like the that I know of, like in the country, like three, right? I can
Yeah.
rattle off like 20 or 30, you know, male gym owners. So that was another thing too. Like being a black female gym owner, like doesn't really go in the same sentence. Everybody, my family was like, "You're insane. What are you doing? Like this is not a thing." And it's not, but it can be. So, um, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go into the drama because there was
No,
a
no, no.
lot.
Yeah, I don't think we need to go super deep into the drama, because you've kind of highlighted the point that I was trying to make, in that there has to be a why, right? There has to be a
Mhm.
deep reason why we take on risk. Because ultimately, opening up a business, especially a brick and mortar business, especially after COVID, is a huge risk. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you have a deep why to create a safe, inclusive space for everybody, I think that's pretty powerful.
Mhm.
One of the things that you and I had spoken about, because I believe we started talking about business around that time. I don't think you didn't start as a mentee of mine for a bit after you opened the gym, but one of the things that you and I had spoken about, I like to play devil's advocate, and something that the social context of right now, I am a cisgendered white male, and I have no, no opinion. But whenever someone hears inclusivity, whenever somebody hears LGBTQ plus, whenever somebody hears those words that maybe are not part of those communities, that level of what most people call inclusivity is actually exclusive in a lot of instances. But you had such an interesting take on that when we spoke that I really think you need to highlight it.
Oh yeah, I have. I do have a very interesting take on this. Um, the downfall of many, we can go as far to say like nonprofit organizations, other businesses, even some gym spaces. The biggest downfall is that they niche down so hard on the community that they want to cater to that they forget that it's a business, first of all,
Yeah.
and the doors have to stay open. Um, and like I guess you never know who A doesn't care, right? Or B is teeter tottering on the fence of something. So like, there may be some guy who has been a jock his whole life, never felt like he'd come out, but that doesn't make him comfortable like in a quote unquote gay space, right?
Mm,
So by being so hardcore, this is only for LGBT people or this is only for black people, you exclude the people who are looking for something, right?
mhm,
Like me, for example, growing up, I grew around mostly, white people. Most of my friends were white and stuff like that. So I was too black for the white people, but too white for the, I was too black for the white people, too white for the black people. So I didn't really fit in anywhere. So I didn't go to like black events and stuff like that because like, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm not going to fit in there. So
mhm.
there's a way to do things that we are very stern. We stand on business on what our goals are and what we stand for. There's a way to do that without making people feel uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So that's what we do. Like, you know what we're about. You
Yep.
know that this is a women owned business. You know that the majority of our staff is of the LGBT community. If you have a problem with that, you probably have problems and we probably don't want you here anyway. But we're not going to push that so hard to where like everyone feels uncomfortable.
Yeah. And that
So you
was
have to find that sweet spot.
that was something that I really appreciated because when you're trying to be inclusive to one population or one group, what ends up happening is, you niche down to that and then you're actually excluding a lot of people who might benefit from being within the doors. And
Hmm.
I know for a fact there's a lot of people like me who quite frankly don't give a fuck if you're purple.
Yeah.
I just want to lift weights and be around cool people,
Hmm.
which is what GND has become.
Yep.
Right? It doesn't matter who you are
Absolutely.
doesn't matter who you are when you walk through the door. The community is everyone. We're all part of this. Doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are, what your sexual orientation is, you know, what color what color clothing you wear. We're all just showing up. We're all trying to be better versions of ourselves. And I fucking love that. And I think it's so, so important. Um, Now let's fast forward a little bit because while most people look at this story and they're like, wow, Kelli has done, it's been smooth sailing and it's been smooth sailing. She's got a deep seated why. Her community is thriving. It hasn't all been sunshine and lollipops, especially when you dove into purchasing another gym on the other side of the country. Let's talk about that.
Man, yeah. Every time I tell this story, I like there's something loose up there.
Unhinged.
Um, well, so yeah, I purchased Liberation Barbell in Austin, Texas. Again, being deeply rooted and being passionate and like I don't want to live my life without passion, right? So
Yeah.
I knew that this community would just simply die if I wasn't able to step in and take it over. And I didn't want that to happen because, I mean, it's Texas, let's just be real. There's not many spaces for people of color, people, the LGBT community, people who just want to be safe, period. Like, you know, um, it wasn't space for them down there. So I did it. I bought it. Um, Lots of hiccups in that. We got drug on the internet for about a month. Um, you know, by the former GM. Like it was rough. It was a very rough transition and other issues have come up throughout the way. But like my why is what keeps me going, you know?
Mhm.
So it's just like, okay, yes, there's challenges, but if it's at all within my power to keep this community thriving and keeping like GND at the forefront of people's minds and like what our mission is and what we're about, I'm going to do it no matter what. Again, as long as it's within my power. Sometimes things are not within your power. And, you know, you also have to be a leader in the sense of not letting everything else around you go to crap. Um, but yeah, it was rough. And then, like, literally a month after we took over Texas, we started getting harassed and kicked out of our Chicago space. Um, so I've essentially opened 3 gyms in 13 months, and it's wouldn't change it for the world.
For people who, that's not true. For people,
Not true at all.
that's
False.
right. Um, for people who don't know, G&D's original location, the landlords kicked them out for deadlifting.
Yeah,
They kicked them out for
allegedly.
deadlifting, allegedly. So
Yeah.
this is where, as a gym owner and as a business owner in general, you're going to deal with these unforeseen circumstances. You're going to deal with these chaotic environments that, for all intents and purposes, are outside your control. Because I mean, ultimately, that landlord made your life a living hell for a
Oh
good
yeah.
few months, until even like legally made your life a living hell, to the point where you had to find a new location and take an even bigger risk, because the new location is what, 3 times the size of the previous location?
Yep. 9,000 square feet.
9,000 square feet of gym space. What were some of the steps that you took within the process of transitioning from the original location to this 3x expansion?
Few. So I had to make some hard decisions. Because obviously one of the options after getting kicked out was not having a Chicago location, right? Like that's just the reality of the situation.
Hmm.
Um, it was important to stay within the area of where we were because in business, you know, you can't really move farther than about a half a mile before you start to see drop off
Right.
from clientele. So finding something last minute rushed in downtown Chicago was a nightmare. Um, you know, me, Lexi, and Lexi, like we were all scrambling because we had just bought Texas. So we formally got the first eviction notice while we were like getting Texas set up.
Hmm.
So we're opening that, trying to keep our calm. Me and Lexi are in Austin dealing with that. And then they had begun harassing the staff in Chicago. So, you know, first things first, get the attorney involved, get these people off of my staff's back and like put them in their place and then immediately start looking for a new location. Um it was crazy. Everything was out of our budget. Um you know, and I remember we talked about I showed you pictures on our video call of this space. I'm like, man, this place sucks. You know, it's terrible. It's ugly. I hate it. I was like going through it because I'm like, this is all we could afford, and this is such a downgrade. Um, but I had to get over that. I had to then extract the positives out of the situation. Hey, it's a much bigger space. It's a raw space. We could do what we want with it. You know, just kind of playing the pros and cons in my head because essentially this place was like the only option we had at this point because
Hmm.
we had to get out so quickly. And it's the middle of winter. And for those who don't know how Chicago real estate works, like not much happens in real estate, especially not commercial real estate in the wintertime. So that that was insane. But we found the spot, got a good deal. The landlord's great. We signed the paperwork, and then we pony up. Um, we moved. I think we had like 20 to 25 people help us move.
Which speaks
Um,
to the community for sure.
Community is amazing, and it took us like 3 or 4 back and forth trips in 2 different trucks to get everything over. Um, so yeah, it worked out.
Talk to me a little bit about, and this is something I've never talked about on the podcast, and I think your situation, is the perfect opportunity, because I have had gym owners on the podcast, but none of the gym owners I've had on the podcast have actually worked with an active investor.
Yep.
What's the process of working with an investor? Like, how does that work? Because obviously they're not just giving you money.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, we're actually still like trying to figure out the kinks as well. But the biggest takeaway I have for people who ask me about like investors, um, people invest in people.
Oh,
That's it.
well said. Yeah.
That's it. If you're a good person, obviously you have to show that you can do something in business, but people invest in people. And most investors, all I've met probably at this point like hundreds of investors in my life, and they've all told me pretty much the same thing. Like I invest in people. Like if I believe enough in the vision, the numbers make a little bit of sense or enough sense where I know that I'm going to get something on my return. um, you know, that's just it. But you have to be like very honest and transparent with them as well. Because I do work with other small businesses, I've had people have investors and they just straight up lie to them. They cook the books, they fudge the numbers to make it look like they're doing great. And they're not. And that is the big no-no. Our investor like involved every step of the way. Like not involved as in like calling the shots per se, but like I was honest and transparent about everything, even if it's like embarrassing, even if it's like, you don't really want to talk about it, you're frustrated about it, the future looks grim because I mean for months, to be honest, I had no idea if G&D was going to be a thing anymore.
Yeah. We talked a lot
I
about it.
I had no idea what between Chicago Tech, like whatever. I didn't know. I'm just like, I just have to take steps to do my best, and my best is all I can do. I don't have a bunch of money. I don't have a bunch of capital. Um, you know, so that you have to be transparent about that with your staff, with everyone involved. Luckily, I'm hard to kill, and I don't. I don't take no as an answer. When somebody tells me no, like with this whole situation, it's like I got told no so many times. When you're looking for a commercial space for a gym, you get told no a lot. Like finding the first gym, I think we went through maybe 50 or 60 properties. Finding the second, I knew more, I had more information, being a realtor, all that. So it's, the pool was smaller, but still like 20 to 30, contacts. You're going to see these places, you're investing time, you're talking to these people back and forth just for somebody to be like, oh, no, we don't want a gym here actually. We thought you were a yoga studio, or we thought you were like a Orange Theory or something like that. Um, so yeah, it's a wild world out here.
So when you're working with an investor, do you give them a percentage of the business in exchange for their capital influx? Like how does that actual like X, you don't have to give like specifics, but like how do the
Mhm.
X's and O's work when dealing with an investor?
You come up with a number that works for you. So in, my situation, you get a percentage of equity in the business after a certain period of time, right? So since we're basically a startup, it's not like I can turn around tomorrow because we have no profits to give,
Right.
right? So, um, I encourage my mentees that I work with on stuff like this, like, make a timeline. Say like, okay, in a year and a half or, 18 months, 2 years, whatever, you're gonna get 10% of the profits uh, every quarter. And so what you do is you send your investor your report, your quarterly report that you have, because you should have. You'd be surprised how many people don't have, but you should have some sort of software tracking your financials so that you can easily click a button and send them the financials and then their payout. You agree on how the payout is going to go. So, am I going to send you a check? Am I going to give you cash? I don't recommend cash. Am I am
Just
I
a
going to wire it?
suitcase,
Yeah, here's your cash.
manila
Um,
envelope.
yeah, and then you decide, is that investment going to be, you know, until they make their money back plus whatever number they're looking for? Is it going to be indefinite? Is it going to be for 20 years? Is it going to be for 10 years? You have to decide the terms because some people, don't want to pay an investor forever, right? So you have to have an exit strategy um, with that investment. And, Our investor's a little bit different. I always tell them that, you're stuck with me forever, um, on
Well,
different levels, but
you're stuck with them forever too.
right. And it's a great relationship. But it's hard, and you have to really be careful who you go into business with.
Well, ultimately, the challenge with an investor that I would see is that ultimately you're beholden to somebody at that point, because now it's not
Hmm.
only your ass on the line, it's theirs.
Yep.
And that could create a tremendous amount of pressure.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I'm sure for you that pressure is more of a motivator than a detractor, but I'm sure that plays into the pressure that you feel on a day-to-day basis to produce.
Absolutely. Because you have somebody to answer to, you know? If shit hits the fan, it's not like I could just like, oh, well, we're out of here. Like, no, I got people to answer to.
Hmm. Talk to me a little bit about managing a team, because this is something that uh, for those who have never managed a team, it is a phenomenal challenge, but it's also very rewarding.
Hmm.
What have been some of the obstacles that you've faced or challenges that you've faced, and how have you navigated them?
Oof. It's crazy that I thought that it would be as easy as it's always been for me because I have a managing background. I was a manager in different fields for more than half of my working career. Um, but the challenge with this was like working with your friends, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I can compartmentalize. Everybody can't. So I found myself in the position of like not wanting to be too strict or cause any rifts or like all these mental games I was playing with myself that essentially hurts the business at the end of the day, because at the end of the day what like every business owner that I sit down with is you have to remember that it's a business regardless to anything else. So one of my biggest challenges is not being stern enough. I'm very much a I'll do it myself person because I like things done a certain way on my time schedule and stuff like that. But I had to learn how to like let people help me and like do jobs,
Hmm.
right? And that's something I still struggle with even to today. Like I still struggle with
Same.
that, with it being my baby versus like at my corporate job, it was easy to delegate and tell people what to do, set the expectations,
Yeah, it
everything,
wasn't your ass on the line though.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's much different now. And I mean, over the last, it's been a quick turnaround, couple months, like I've grown a ton and have like figured out things that, you know, work for me or that are working better. That's going to push the gym in the right direction. And that came with some challenges.
Yeah, one of the things that you and I spoke about a lot, and is something that I preach to those coaches that I work with and I implement within our own business, is I'm huge on communication. I'm also huge
Hmm.
on transparency, right? So I personally find it easier to do business with friends because I would expect a certain level of empathy from my friends that I might not expect from a traditional transactional employee, right?
Hmm.
So when I have conflict, I come at them with like, hey, this is the reality of the situation. This is the position I'm being put in. This is what I need from you. Are you able to step up? Or is this something that you're not interested in doing? Understanding full well that as my friend, I don't have any expectation of you beyond making a decision.
Hmm.
Again, you mentioned, uh, separation, right? Separating business from friendship. I'm very good at that. Some people are not. So to be able to have those upfront, honest conversations is a skill, and it's a skill that you've learned over the last little bit. And I'm sure you've noticed the trickle down effects of that within the process of trying to grow this business to fill a 9,000 square foot space.
Yeah.
Now, how has it been trying to manage and grow a facility that is on the other side of the country?
Oh boy. It's tough. I'm not gonna lie. I remember taking over Texas and like having a bunch of people like, oh, maybe I should open a gym in another state. And I'm like, all right, good luck. Um, it's probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done. Um, but I have a lot of faith in the GM that's there, and it's just a lot of communication. It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of reminding all of them, the entire staff, like I'm still here for support, even though I'm in Chicago. Um, it's it's a lot, and it can be done, but it's a lot.
What are some systems that you've implemented that you feel have allowed you to be successful the way that you have up to this point?
Um, I would say that's a good question. What are my systems? One of the things that does help is having a CRM for like the same CRM platform for both locations. That helps a lot. Um, because when it comes to like accounting and checking memberships and like having that easy access to both things, like I didn't think it would be that big of a deal because at first in Texas we were using something different. Um, but once we switched over to the same thing, it like shaved hours off my week. Having that at my
Mm-hmm.
fingertips. Um, I guess setting up the standing meetings with the GM, like that's one thing that helps a ton. Having the agenda set like up front of what we want to talk about up front to save us both some time. And I mean, really, that's it. I mean, it's just a whole lot of talking to people. That's what I do know.
What have been some of the challenges that you've had, maybe creating more awareness of the gym or marketing the gym locally, but in both states?
So locally, I mean, attracting like as we pivot a bit, attracting the ideal customer client has been a bit of a uh issue only because of our fast change. So like at the other location in Chicago, for example, it was so small, we really couldn't take on much more. Like we couldn't do much more
Hmm.
with membership, even with clients. Like we couldn't take on much more trainers or anything like that. Um, but now it's a lot. We got a lot of space to fill. We got a lot of space to fill, a lot of overhead to cover. So now it's like, okay, how do we find these neighborhood people? Like, what can we do to attract the people within the neighborhood because we're surrounded by condos? Um, how do we do that? I'm not a marketing major, and I just have a lot of connections in Chicago, and I know people who know people, and I've been more adamant about like I did an event last week. I'll be doing another corporate event. So tapping into my resources finally, and having to have those uncomfortable conversations like, hey, you got anything coming up that I could, hop into? Or, when I get invited to an event, I would normally be like, ah, nah, maybe not. But like just saying yes to everything just to see if I can like pull something out of it. Um, but in Chicago is not as big of a challenge that it is in Austin. Austin's a completely different scenario for me. I don't know anybody. I don't have any connections. Not corporate connections, none with the universities. Complete 180 from what I have in Chicago. So it's tough. Like creativity is like at an all time high, and just trying to figure out okay, like canvassing who do we talk to, like, and this is the crazy thing that I have to also think about. Like we're in Texas, even though we're in Austin, like we're in Texas. You know, um, it's not as easy for a person who looks like me to just walk into somewhere and be like, "Hey, come to my gym." I get funny looks. People are like, well, I don't know about you. Um, that sort of thing because all these people are strangers to me. So it's getting creative, using what resources that I do have in a place where everyone's a stranger. It's a challenge.
Well, you're also facing the challenge of the reputation that the gym had prior to you being there.
Yeah.
That's something most people don't know is the gym, like Liberation, had developed this sort of reputation that a lot of your decision making had to come in to counteract. Can you
Mhm.
speak to that a little bit?
Well, like we talked about inclusive exclusivity. Like, people knew it as like the gay gym, right? And that blocks out, I mean, again, we're in the middle of Texas. That's going to block out a lot of people because there are a lot of people who don't care. But if that's all your marketing is and that's the only thing that you push, you're going to turn a lot of people off. So trying to overcome that is, difficult. I mean, luckily we came in, we painted the walls black and red, and we gave it that just regular gym feel. And I
Hmm.
mean, we'll put the logo up and stuff like that. But fighting through that is tougher than most people would realize. No matter what the reputation of any business that you buy is, like, you're gonna have to fight with that if you're still at the same address, especially. So that's
Yeah.
tough.
The reason I wanted to highlight the challenges is the reason you've been able to continue to overcome and the reason that you continue to fight is because you have a deep seated why and you truly believe in what you're trying to do.
Hmm.
And I personally am of the mind that when you have this internal motivation, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So
Correct.
if you're building this thing and you know exactly what you're trying to do and you know exactly what the goal is and your why behind it is strong, a deep why will overcome any how. So
Period.
you're going to find a way.
Hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about the other things that you do because you mentioned it once and I think people will likely glance over it, but you're also a real estate agent.
I am.
So, so
Uh,
if anyone's keeping up, Kelli is a coach. She owns two gyms. She's a real estate investor and she's a real estate agent. That's a lot of things.
yeah. Um, I became a realtor for kind of the same reasons that I wanted to open a gym. When I went to invest in, well, I wanted to learn more about investing in real estate. My family had been in real estate, is still in real estate. They are landlords and stuff like that. So when I went to look, all the real estate agents kind of looked over me. I didn't have much money. I was working like 3 jobs in school, kind of all over the place, but I needed the information because I'm a planner. I needed to plan what was ahead. And honestly, I couldn't find anybody to help me until I reached out to my old college friend and I was like, hey, I'm going to buy a house with you as soon as I'm ready. And she believed me. So when I was ready, I called her. I said, all right, we're ready to go. Let's get the pre approval. Let's do it. And she sold me my property. And I realized how many people just don't know how this thing works. People don't know how real estate works. They think it's big and scary and that, it's all this money and it's unattainable. So I became a real estate agent so that I could show people the way, so that I could show people how to find affordable housing, for them and teach them how to invest, even if you don't have much money. So that's what I also do now.
Talk to me a little bit about your involvement in the business community because that's something that you don't advertise very much, but you're very active within. What would I be wrong to say? Like the African American business owner, like young entrepreneur community.
Yes, so I'm on the board of directors for the LGBT Chamber of Commerce, the Illinois chapter, and I've been a part of that program. I met my very first like mentor, uh, Christina, who taught this business boot camp, and I took it serious. I got everything out of it, made some great connections, and then from that, like, I knew I wanted to give back in that way too. So I just this past year, I've been on the board for like a year and some change now. And with that, I actually now facilitate the program that I graduated from. So I spearhead that. I'm also a mentor. So this year I had um, a mentor in the program. I do a lot in the African American business space. I sit on panels and volunteer a whole lot of my time to make sure that people like have the support that they need and that they can do it. And I love people to look at me, and like, I've had other random people, even just had dinner with a friend a couple days ago that was like, because of you, like I believe I can do this. And that coming from another person of color is so powerful to me personally, because it's like, man, like people are really watching what I'm doing, and even if they don't say anything, like they're taking that to heart. So that's why I do what I do in those spaces as well, and volunteer my time and raise money for those organizations. Even though I don't have a ton of money myself, I've we've already done like, 3 charity events in the year we've been open. So very heavy on that passionate part of me.
I think that's honestly, it speaks to the quality of person that you are, but it also again reaffirms that your passion is exactly what you try to live every day. And
Mhm.
you're giving back. To me, I have this like people often will say like, what's the meaning of life? And my own personal interpretation of that is the meaning of life is service to others. And when you give back in a mentorship capacity, you're serving others to find their highest purpose. And to me, that is my highest purpose of service, is serving other people's highest purpose. So whenever I hear of anyone doing that, I'm always really interested to hear the why behind it. And I'd love to know, like, ultimately, where does this drive come from? Like in all the things, right? You talked about the why behind starting the business. You talked about the why behind becoming a real estate agent and giving back. But what's the motivation to continue to push? Where does that come from?
It's deeply rooted in my genetics, to be honest. Watching my mother, she was a single mother, and she's one of the most successful women I know. She did everything she had to do, no matter what the excuse was. And like having her as like, looking back on it now, like when I was a kid, I'm like, oh, she's mean. She's so strict. She sucks. Like I was on punishment if I got a B, in school if it wasn't straight A's. And there's just I want to make my family proud. That's one thing. They're all my grandma, my grandpa when he was still here. I just want to make them all proud. And then now I have the best partner in the world. So it's like, I want our lives to be above and beyond. I want it to be so great, like undeniably great. I want to have a comfortable, successful life where I'm making a difference. And way back when, I decided I wasn't going to do anything I wasn't passionate about. Period. I don't care. When it got to a point where I could stop doing the stupid jobs and sales jobs and working restaurants, and like I hated all of that. When it got to a point where I could actually be like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. Um, I'm going to do something that serves me, that serves others, that's going to make a wave for, people coming behind me and my kids in the future. Leaving a legacy is super important to me. So that's what drives me every day. I mean, there's days I want to quit. There are definitely some days where I'm like,
Yep.
yo, this is not like, no,
This is not
big
the move.
no, this is not. This was dumb. I mean, there have been days, and I'll be honest, there have been days like this is the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. What have I done? I had a great corporate job with a great boss and benefits and all that, and I gave all that up to like shoot myself in the foot daily. I do have those moments, but then I look at the videos that like the kids in the gym are posting, and like everybody around me. I look at how great like my staff is doing, and they're bringing in new clients and doing well, and I'm like, nah, this isn't so bad.
That
So
in that in
that's
itself, like I don't think people understand. Like that in and of itself, the decision to say, I'm not going to do anything that I'm not passionate about anymore, that's a huge risk. That's a
huge.
huge undertaking. I told myself that a couple years ago. Even as soon as I went off on my own, I quit my cushy corporate job. I said, you know what? I'm not going to do anything anymore that doesn't make me go, fuck yeah. And it's been scary. And there have been moments where I didn't think I could do it. Right now I'm in a season where I'm, bitten off more than I can chew and I'm a little bit overwhelmed. But you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world, because the alternative is to just not enjoy my life.
Exactly.
And
That's
that's,
it.
that's not a trade-off I'm willing to make. Um, Let me ask you this, because it's something that you and I work on a lot. What's been the process for you to continue to prioritize yourself during these times? Because this is a challenge that we all face when the workload gets high, the stress levels get high. The easiest thing to do is let our self and our own goals fall by the wayside. Um, what has been that process for you? Because I know you've been on both sides of it.
Oh yeah. They're just for me. It's like I'm a people pleaser. Of course, I want everybody. I take care of everybody else before myself. But like you and I got to a point where I realized that wasn't serving me, as
Mhm.
I had tons of health issues coming up or came up. Back before I opened the gym, I had to have surgery, and now dealing with all these medications that I have to take now. That's really like I can't even afford my medications right now, so that's not great to deal with. So I knew that to combat that, like I have to take good care of myself, right? And I have Lexi who reminds me every day, like, look, if you keel over and die, this all dies. So knowing that, like, although I have a great team of people that that are helping grow the gym and like pushing the gym in the right direction, and it's amazing. But ultimately, and it's like really tough to think about, it's like if something happens to me and I'm not good or I'm back in the hospital or something, like it all stops. So everything that I've poured this 10 years of planning and dreaming and money and all this, like that all goes away.
Yep.
So, more recently, I have been more consistent. I have been doing what I'm supposed to be doing because, like, I realize that I have to be good for myself. I have to be good for my partner. I have to be good for my employees and everybody else, my mentees, everybody who looks up to me, my family. Um, so that's what really got like hammered home more recently. It's like, if I'm not good, this doesn't even matter. It's gone.
I'm so glad that you said that because we had a couple hard conversations, you and I, about you know exactly what you just outlined, and I feel the same way. You listen. At the end of the day, we have to be at our best to be at our best for others. So if
Mm,
you giving up your own health allows you to be maybe a little bit more productive in the short term, it's killing you in the long term, literally killing you and your dreams in the long term. So if you need to slow down your rate of growth to make sure that you stay on stable footing and to make sure that your health is a priority, it might slow you down in the short term. But what you're doing is you're breaking that glass ceiling for the long term. Because I
right.
know personally, when I'm at my best, man, I do great work. But when I'm not,
Hmm.
that shit falls off. And
Hmm.
I'm personally not willing to compromise the level of service that I provide to other people just for a little bit of quicker growth. It's not aligned with my personal values. Um,
Hmm.
I think that's a phenomenal way to end the serious part of the podcast. I like to finish the podcast with some silly quick hit questions. So, why do you hate Kanye West so much?
That's a phenomenal. I don't hate him. So actually, I bought one of his shirts because I didn't think it was real, and it was only $20. So I wear this. It's one of my favorite shirts now. Um, but he forgot where he came from, and he turned into like this, for lack of better words, like psychopath.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it's like he went from a person that I really looked up to, really liked, like watched him go through the trenches of the Chicago music scene, which I was heavily into as he was coming up. And then I don't know what happened, dude. Like
You went
off
crazy.
his, yeah, he went crazy. So not a fan.
Why do you hate Common? Why do you hate all of my favorite rappers?
Again, don't hate him. Like I don't think I really can hate anybody, but like I was
That's
disappointed.
not true.
Well, yeah, you're right. I was disappointed in like figuring out who he was like in real life versus
Yeah.
like who I looked up to him to be. Um, so yeah, that
I've always just been jealous of his voice and his beard.
he has a good beard.
Great beard. Great beard.
Yeah.
Um, will you bench 300 pounds this year?
Yeah. I'm gonna do that, or I'm blow my shoulders or pecs out trying.
Let's not do that. Let's just do the first part. And we'll leave the second part for maybe when you're not my client. I don't have to deal with that.
Oh, well.
What are you most excited about for the next 12 months? Like, what's the thing that you're just so excited about?
Oh man, I'm excited about a lot. I'm really excited about really leaning into like the strength and conditioning aspect of being in that fitness space versus so heavily powerlifting. And I'm super excited to see like what the trainers and as we start like group classes and stuff like that. I'm really excited to see the growth of the gym like in that aspect and being more of a community hub for like the UIC kids and the West Loop residents, like who don't have to feel so intimidated by the powerlifting piece. So I'm really excited with all the space that we have now and the 115 feet of turf. Like, we have a couple trainers who like that's what they do. Like they do sports performance. So I'm really excited to see that piece really build out because I know that's gonna like explode the gym in a whole different direction.
Last question. Who is someone that you would like to see me interview on the podcast? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on.
Ooh, that's a rough question.
I know. I get my guests to do my job for me.
I see.
Yeah. I'm a work smarter, not harder kind of guy.
Someone I want on the podcast. Man, I don't know. Nobody comes to the top of my head that I could help you get on the podcast.
You can't help me get Kanye on the podcast?
Absolutely not. Can't help you with that. Cannot help in one bit.
I don't know how I would ever wrangle that conversation. I'm a pretty good communicator, but that might push my limits.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
You can get back to me on that one.
I can get back to you on that. Yeah.
If there was, I'll have links to where everyone can find you in the show notes. But what is one piece of parting wisdom that you would have for the audience?
I actually just said this to my friend a few hours ago. Live your life with passion. If there's something that you want to do and you're scared to do it, just rip the Band-Aid off and do it anyway, because most mistakes are fixable. And I just always think, what's the worst that can happen, right? Even if you fall on your face, that's fine. You can bounce back from it.
Yeah, you can have plastic surgery, get a new face.
Yeah, exactly. There's a fix.
Kelli, thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.